Or good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first edition here of our Meet the Paralegals Venture Candidate Series here on Justice and Pieces. Really happy that we'll hopefully get a chance to hear from all of the candidates over the next few weeks. Today, we thought it'd be great to start to hear from the Good Governance Coalition Paralegal Venture candidates. So without further ado here, I'll leave it to each of them to introduce themselves. So first, let's hear from Deborah.
Hi, everyone. My name is Deborah Moria, and I'm happy to be here with my running mates tonight. And we're just really looking forward to this election and getting to know everybody. And I'll just let you know a little bit about myself. If you don't know, I was licensed in 2016. I actually went to Centennial College. This is a second career for me. I've really loved it so far. And I am also the president of the Ontario Association of Black Paralegals, which was founded in 2020. And currently I work as an EDI professional. And I'm also looking to get back into private practice, so I will keep you posted with that. And I'll just pass it on to my colleague.
All right, so let's hear from Dimitra next.
Hi, everyone. My name is Dimitra Demikopoulos. I was licensed in 2011. I did my paralegal program at Seneca College. This is my first career. And right now I work in-house at a leading recycling and garbage company called WM. And I focus mostly on corporate, commercial, and litigation matters, mostly in small claims, small business.
Next, we have Michelle.
Just lost my document. That's a great start, isn't it? Thank you, JP, for providing this opportunity for all of us to speak to the paralegal audience. It's very kind of you to do so. So I just wanted to say thank you. So I'm Michelle Amazo, and I'm a current venture. I was elected in 2019, so I've been a venture for 4 years now. I am proud to be the first paralegal venture elected outside of the GTA. And you'll see from our compliment here today that I think it's really important that we have representation from paralegal ventures across the province. So we have 2 candidates from Toronto, the GTA, Paula Callahan from Ottawa, Mike Levian from London, and I'm from Windsor. I'm currently the chair of the Paralegal Standing Committee, and I sit on numerous committees at the Law Society. I finished a university undergrad degree and thought I'd go to law school. And I was moving from Windsor to London, so I was looking for work and saw that the Office of the Worker Advisor was hiring for a bilingual worker advisor advocate. And I remember thinking, maybe I can be an advocate for others by representing injured workers in their fields before the WSIB and not have to go to law school. And that's exactly how it worked out. So I did work for the ministry for 6 years. I learned everything I could. And then I opened my own business doing WSIB appeals. I was then licensed by the Law Society in 2008, and I've now practiced in the world of WSIB for more than 30 years. I love the work. It's super interesting and challenging. Thanks.
Next up, we have Mike.
Thank you, JP, and thanks for having us here today. My name is Mike Dan. I did my paralegal program at Trios College. I was licensed in 2016. After becoming licensed, I started my own practice, worked on my own for a year or so, and then in partnership with 2 other paralegals. Since 2018, I've been working in-house at the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, doing assessment litigation. It's a great opportunity. It's sort of in a field that that's paralegal dominant, but not a lot of people know about. So that I think gives me a unique perspective. And I'm really happy to be on the team with the other 4 coalition candidates across the province and representing not just one area of the province, but everywhere from Ottawa down to Windsor and the GTA. So a great group of people, and hopefully we'll get your support in the election.
And finally, we have Paula.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, JP, for having us. And I too am thrilled to be running with such a good group of paralegal in Ottawa, and I've been licensed since 2011. Went to Algonquin Careers Academy, a private college, and I have been practicing a sole practitioner since that time. Currently, I'm also a program coordinator for Hearson College in the paralegal program. I am also the CCLA, which is the County of Carleton Law Association. I am the first ever elected paralegal trustee in its history. And I received distinguished paralegal, the annual paralegal award in 2021. And in 2022, I received the William J. Simpson Distinguished Paralegal Award for my efforts at the County of Carleton Law Association in advancing the role of paralegals. So, I'm thrilled, and I have been in governance of the profession since 2011, whether it be with the Paralegal Society of Ontario or the OPA, and then later on at the CCLA. So I look forward to, meeting all of you throughout this election process. And I'm thrilled to be with, very, very, very capable paralegals. Thank you.
Perfect. So thanks everyone for their introductions there. I guess the first question I get, in certainly like Paula, I'm a program coordinator, and one of our first courses you learn about the governance of the Law Society. And the question essentially is, what is a bencher, right? I mean, the word bencher doesn't necessarily, it's difficult in of itself there of what it means and what you do. So maybe Michelle, being I believe the only incumbent bencher running in the paralegal candidates, perhaps you could tell us a bit about, what is a bencher, what is your role, and elaborate a little bit more about your time as a bencher thus far. And I believe you're on mute. Sorry, Michelle.
No. So a bencher is the Law Society's title for the board of director member. So what that means is every organization, not-for-profit and or profit corporations, have boards of directors. And at the Law Society, instead of calling our members a board of director, or a director, we call them benchers. And as well, we call the head of our board, most board chairs are exactly that. Their title is chair. At the Law Society, we call the head of our board the treasurer. And then the meeting of the board is what we call convocation. So at convocation, we make policies on reports that are debated at our monthly committee meetings. And benchers who are elected every 4 years have to govern in the public interest. So it's sometimes misunderstood by licensees, both lawyers and paralegals, that benchers do what paralegals want them to do. But that's not your fiduciary duty. When you are brought on as a bencher at the Law Society, you have to take off your personal hat as a paralegal, and you have to do what's in the public interest. So the whole idea is to protect the public. So we're really fortunate in Ontario that we have the right to self-govern. But part of that self-governing has restrictions around it. So the Law Society Act dictates what we have to consider. And it's all about the public interest. It's about doing what's in the benefit of access to justice for the people of Ontario. So in a nutshell, that is what the venture is at the Law Society of Ontario.
Perfect. So thanks for that overview. And I guess we can go to Deborah to this question about why are you running for venture, and maybe specifically why as part of the Good Governance Coalition.
Thank you, JP, and thank you, Michelle, for explaining that. I think it's really important that people understand why we're doing this and what the purpose of ventures is. So I will let you know, I wanted to be a venture. I was actually approached about running, and my first reaction was, I don't know if that's something that has been on my radar or something that I really want to do, because I've always worked doing grassroots work. Everything's been nonprofit. Like, I like working in the community and with people, and I like to see the impact that I'm having. And so I thought to myself, I don't see how I can have that impact at Convocation. Like, I just don't see it. But then I came to understand what Michelle just explained, that we're doing this for the people of Ontario. And I mean, that's where my heart is. And so I think doing something like this, having a position where I can help make decisions about how the Law Society regulates paralegals and lawyers to provide services to the people of Ontario, that's a really important responsibility. And so that's the main reason that I want to do it. Doing it with the coalition, I would say it's because we have aligned interests. So I really do have a passion for equity, diversity, and inclusion. It's important for me to let people know that systemic discrimination is a thing. And I think that there has been some talk about it not being real and maybe a myth and a one-off experience for some people, but it is a real thing. I like that the coalition it consists of people who are representative of the people that we serve. And I think that's important, because I think when you are coming and you're looking for legal services, it's important to have somebody that can understand your experiences. And if we're governing people who are going to be approached by the public, we need to represent those people as well. And so I really love that about the coalition. I love that about the paralegal profession. As some people may know, a huge percentage of the paralegal profession are women and racialized individuals. And so I think that we need to be representative of that. And so that's the main reason I want to run. I really want to be a part of change. I think that the coalition is the right way to do that. There's a lot more I have to say about that, but I'll save it for one of the questions that I know you have later. And I will pass it on to one of my colleagues. Thank you, JP.
All right, Dimitra, how about you?
Yeah, well, I decided to run because just like anything in life, you could sit back, criticize, and complain, or you could do something about this and make changes. If you want to see changes, go where changes are made. And so I thought I'd put my name forward to become a bencher and do my part in helping just advance the paralegal profession and really see the changes that I'd like to see down the road, and have more equity, more representation for just paralegals, and to help the public. Now, in terms of running with the Good Governance Coalition, for me, it was an excellent opportunity to run alongside people who have the shared values and to start building relationships with lawyers who have these shared values, because in essence, that's what we're going to be doing if we get a seat at the table. We're going to be discussing and engaging with lawyers. So why not start now? So I thought it'd be a great opportunity to get a head start on that, to share resources. And it's always great to put more heads together for the same mission than to go at it by yourself. So I thought this was an excellent opportunity.
And Michelle, I guess being an incumbent, or the only incumbent again, why run for re-election, and why with the Good Governance Coalition?
Sure. So I'm running for re-election because I want to be able to continue the work, the important work I started in my first term as a bencher. And my original reason for wanting to be a bencher hasn't changed. I'm not doing it to build my resume. There's no other position I aspire to. I'm doing it because I care about the people of Ontario, and I want to give them an option for legal representation when they can't afford a lawyer. I care about the paralegal profession and I want to see it succeed and do well. I am running for re-election because I have 35 years experience sitting on boards. And it's important that we have people who understand what, how to behave at a board meeting. You know, it used to be, JP, that the debates that occurred at convocation were thoughtful. They were measured and focused on the issues at hand. But in this past term, we've seen benchers waste convocation's time and licensees' money by bringing motions from the floor without committee analysis in support and by speechifying as if they were living out some parliamentary fantasy and by unnecessary grandstanding and interruptions that disrespect the important role that the Law Society is legislated to fulfill. So that's why I'm running for venture with a good governance coalition. And it's why I'm asking voters to please support our entire team of 5 paralegals so that we can stop the lack of reform, we can stop the extreme rhetoric, and stop the negativity we all read about on social media. What we need to do is focus on regulating the professions in the public interest. So if you vote for me and my 4 paralegal colleagues on the coalition, I can assure you that as experienced professionals, we take our responsibilities seriously. And that's how communication must work if we're going to continue to self-regulate.
Thanks, Michelle. Mike, how about you?
Yeah, I wanted to run for the position of bencher. I really see the paralegal profession at a crossroads. We've been licensed for 15 years. We're a relatively new, young profession. We've made great strides in those 15 years, and we can continue to move forward. Or, you know, we could, with the wrong leadership, take steps backwards that could hurt us immeasurably. So I think it's important that we elect leaders at convocation that are professional, that can work well with others, that are respectful, and that can advocate from the paralegal perspective to promote access to justice and the paralegal role in access to justice. I know that I've been fortunate to be part of an organization to work in-house for the last 5 years that has really pumped up the role of paralegals. We've had, at one point before I started, we had 60% of litigation went to external legal counsel. And over the last 5 years, AMPAC has hired a large number of paralegals and has brought that down to 10%. So all that litigation that was being done previously by lawyers is now being done by paralegals, and we're having tremendous results. And there's no reason that we can't have that same success in all areas of practice. And so I think it's really important that that we do elect people, because we are, whether we like it or not, are the face of paralegals to the Law Society, the benchers that we elect, to the paralegal and lay benchers. So if we have people who are disrespectful, who are trying to push an agenda that is beyond what benchers are supposed to do, it's just not going to look good for anybody. So I really believe we need a group of benchers that can work together and that can work with the lawyer and lay benchers. And that's what really drew me to the coalition. Prior to joining, I had people ask me to run, thought I should run as an individual. And, as Dimitra said, we have to work with the other. You're either one of 53 benchers, or even if we're all together, we're 5 of 53. And so that's certainly not the numbers that are going to just accomplish anything without working with other people. So without working with the lawyers, without working with the lay benchers. So I think being part of the running as with the Good Governance Coalition and with these other 4 paralegals that we're doing that, we're starting to do that already. We're already starting to build bridges. We're starting to build relationships that will go on. And if we're elected, we will be able to leverage and advocate the paralegal perspective much better than somebody who has never, has been working alone and is going to continue working alone. So the other, and when I started talking to Michelle about joining the coalition, the one thing that really impressed me, and probably the reason I decided to join the group, was that all of the candidates, the 40 lawyers and the 5 paralegals, all acknowledged that paralegals are an important part of access to justice and are a critical part of the justice system. I don't believe there are any other lawyer groups or individuals that have said that. And in fact, I think some of them hold paralegals in disdain. So, so we're already starting with this group of 40 lawyers that is already working with us and is already acknowledged that paralegals are a critical part of the justice system and access to justice. So that was why I was really felt strongly that it was much better to run as a group with like-minded principles and shared core values. However, the other important aspect is that we are not voting as a block. So you're not going to get 5 automatic votes from us. We're each going to look at every issue and through our own lens, and we're going to vote for what we think is the best course of action. So if I don't agree with something, I'll vote against it, or if I do agree with something, I'll vote for it, but it'll be individual and not as a block. And I think those two things working together, but still having the individual option, I think is the key to success.
Thanks, Mike. And finally, Paula, what about you?
Well, coming last, I echo all of my colleagues, right? Sort of thing. We all feel the same way about it. Being able to be and sit on a board and convince 40 lawyers and the other lay benchers that your perspective holds water. There is a way to sit on a board and how to approach things. The experience that I bring to the table, as I've been doing this for a very long time, know when to push and know when to pull back and wait for the temperature to be right. If you come into the board with sharp elbows, you become ineffective because nobody will listen to you. And that is most important. And regional representation is huge. And so I would like to carry on the work that I do and have done here in the East, which is unique to paralegals, the niche that we've carved out at ourselves at the County of Carleton Law Association. I hope that will continue on within time. The foundation, what I would like to do is the foundations that we lay today may not benefit the public or the profession in an immediate time frame, which seems to be what everybody wants, but that's really not how it works. It takes time. It takes proper viewing of it. Does this affect the public first? This is the lens that we have to look through everything, regardless of how personally. Our first lens and our first view is this an access to justice issue? Is this good for the public? And if it is, and it intersects with the paralegal profession, how do we then make those two work together, right? That is the most important of the bencher role. Now, as far as the Good Governance Coalition, it was a no-brainer when I was asked to join, simply because they believe in the values that I also believe in. I believe in equity, diversity, and inclusion. I believe in self-governance. We are at risk of losing that, not just for paralegals, but for our lawyer colleagues as well. So building collegial relationships is something that I have been doing for a very long time, as we all have in our own way. And I think that as a group together, we actually bring a lot to the table.
Perfect. So thanks everyone for your answers to that question. Now, kind of related to that is, again, you're running as part of the Good Governance Coalition. Now they have principles, values overall. And as well, I think, some of you kind of touched on this in terms of how voting is going to be done, or maybe your own individual positions. But again, I'll start with you, Deborah, in terms of which stands out from the Good Governance Coalition that you'd say is your number one priority, or the value you hold the most dear, in terms of, again, how, if there is, let's say, a disagreement, maybe whether it's with one of the other paralegal candidates or one of the lawyer benchers, how would sort of that work in terms of voting and making decisions?
I think, well, for me, the main value that I agree with from the coalition is equity, diversity, and inclusion. I think it's just that the fact that they recognize that there is an issue and it is something that needs to be addressed. That's the main thing. I don't think that I can say there's one thing that's my favorite. I also think that they have this clear commitment to access to justice. It's very clear, as you've heard from everyone here tonight, it's very clear to us that the reason that we exist, the reason that we're doing this is for the people of Ontario. And that's a message that we need to make sure that people understand. Like, if it does not intersect with that main objective, then it's pointless. You need to say, even if you have something that's a personal goal of yours as a paralegal and you want this to happen, if it doesn't impact access to justice in any way, you need to be able to let that go. And so I think that this is a group that understands that. The coalition understands why we're here, for the people of Ontario. And there's also this clear support of the paralegal profession. And in my opinion, every paralegal that I've talked to has that concern. They don't feel respected necessarily all of the time. They don't feel like we are seen as equal to our colleagues. And so the fact that these lawyers have welcomed us into the coalition, they're working with us to try and make change happen. We're already starting. Like, that's just like Dimitra said earlier, we've already started. There is that clear commitment. They understand that we are here and we're here to stay. They're supporting our profession. They know that we can support theirs. That's what we need at Convocation. We need people who are willing to work together. And that's what we're doing. We're already doing it. So to me, I think that is those three things, I guess, or four things are the reasons that I want to run with the coalition, and they, I think, would be the most valuable parts of running with the coalition.
I guess over to you, Dimitra.
Thank you. So for me, it was very much voting independently, because if you don't have diversity of thought at the table, you don't have a healthy board. And so that was number one for me. I wouldn't have joined the coalition if that wasn't one of the primary values. And then the other one, just like Deborah just said, is that, paralegals are important to the justice system. The fact that, I'm sure many paralegals, or every one of them, could name a situation where they felt like they didn't belong, or they were felt to feel like they didn't belong, and that they were a problem, or whatever that might be. And you want to be around people who see the value that you bring to the table and see you as an important member of the team. And so to be part of the coalition, be part of a group of paralegal friendly lawyers was a big draw to me in joining the coalition.
Michelle?
It's a really good question, JP. So thanks for asking it. I know that from the beginning, when the Good Governance Coalition decided that it needed to organize in order to address what had occurred in the 2019 election, where 22 lawyer members ran on a slate, and all 22 were elected by splitting the vote. And with the talk of being bigger and stronger for the 2023 election, there was no question that we needed to mobilize if we were going to be able to address what could happen in the 2023 election. And the beauty of all of it was, from day one, I was included as a paralegal bencher with a seat at the table. And my voice counted as important as any lawyer voice in the room. And so I think that speaks volumes. And this group, the Good Governance Coalition, is, I mean, just go through the website and read the titles. We're talking past presidents of law associations, current presidents of law associations, recipients of the Globe and Mail Awards. I mean, we're talking some super impressive members who are at the top of their game in their fields of law. It's super impressive. So to know that they have been so inclusive in so many ways, but in particular to acknowledge that paralegals play an integral role in access to justice, and that we're part of that system that needs to stay. There's a lot of comfort in knowing that we'll have the support of our lawyer colleagues, assuming what we're trying to move forward is in the best interest of the public and access to justice. I also loved the idea that we were not going to vote as a political party. There was no obligation on any topic just to vote a certain way. And you can't tell a fiduciary that they have to vote a certain way. It just doesn't work and it doesn't fly. So the other piece that I really liked was that every coalition member agrees that we need to look at electoral reform at the Law Society. So should these big groups be organizing? Now, having said that, there's no choice this time except to do exactly this: run a coalition against the slate. Otherwise, we were risking self-governance. But I love the idea that following the election, if elected, we will look at election reform at the Law Society to address whether in fact it makes sense to have groups putting slates together for election periods. We don't want to dilute the independent who wants to run independently, but at the same time, the Good Governance Coalition runs for the same things or has the same values that we all share. We're like-minded. It makes it easy, but it doesn't mean we're all going to vote the same way. And it doesn't mean we all have the same position. In fact, if you go to each of our websites, you'll see our platforms are different from each other. None of us saw each other's platforms when we developed our own individually. So we all have ideas about how to advance access to justice, but we've been able to do it individually. And we'll continue to do that if elected.
Thanks, Michelle. Over to you, Mike.
Yeah, I believe your question was that which value or which core value we thought was most important. And it's a really hard question to answer. It's sort of like asking me, which one of my children I love most, right? All the same, but one just a little bit more. So I'll give you three that I really think are important, right? So the first thing, as I already mentioned, the fact that this group, both lawyers and paralegals, have acknowledged that the importance of the paralegal profession in the justice system and in access to justice. So there's already a recognition that we are here to stay. We're part of the Law Society. We've been regulated now for 15 years. And, interestingly, there'll be a time, I think in about 10 years, where the entire bar will have not known a time without paralegals. And so I think that it's really important that we work together collaboratively with the lawyers. And I think so the fact that these lawyer bencher candidates have acknowledged that paralegals are an important part of the justice system, was very important to me. The other thing that we haven't really talked a lot about was one of the core values is that the coalition supports and encourages new licensees. So I know that that's a big issue with a lot of paralegals. You go to school, you get your, you pay your money, you go to school, you're successful, you get your diploma, you get licensed, and then what? Nobody, you're kind of on your own. You're floundering, and so most people end up self-employed. There's not so it's tough. You have to go out there and look for business. You got to go out there. You got to run a business. You have to advertise. You have to do all the admin work yourself. It's like you need support. So the fact that the coalition acknowledges and supports new licensees, both lawyers and paralegals, and wants to put supports in place so that everybody can be successful is also very important to me, because I've seen, at least in my area, I don't know how it is in the rest of the province, but I know that in my area we see a very high attrition rate. Like you see, out of 10 paralegals that graduate from a college, even whether it's Fanshawe Public College or the private colleges, after a number of years, there may be like one or two that are still in practice, and that's not right. We should all be supporting each other, and we should all be working together to make everybody successful. So I thought that was, and then again, as Dimitra and Michelle and Deborah have already mentioned, the independent voting is also, I think, something that we all come from different, even just within the five of us here, we're going to represent the paralegal perspective at convocation, but we all each have our own perspective. Like we all, five of us practice in different areas. I don't think there's very little, if any, overlap. We all come from, we're different ages. We're different. Some of us have come as a second career. For some, it was a first career. We have some in private practice. We have some people in-house. We have people that have, Paula teaches. So there's all kinds of different perspectives that we come at. And so we each look at any issue that comes before convocation with our own lens. And again, like we're not going to vote as a block. We're going to each, if concerns are raised to me and I agree with them, then I will vote that way, regardless of how the other four here or the other 44 vote. So I thought that was very important that we all that we're not just being used, that we are actually our own independent benchers, and that we'll be able to vote independently. So that was also very important. And that's not to say that any of the other core values are any less important, but those are the three that I really that jumped out at me.
And again, finally, Paula, hopefully you're not going to say, yeah, I agree with everything Mike just said, but what about you? What do you really like?
Reading some of the rhetoric online that has already come out of the coalition, my fellow running mates, the overlapping theme is where everyone thinks the same, no one is thinking at all. And that couldn't be further from the truth with this group. We all have various experience in private practice, in criminal, small claims, LTB, OA, throughout my career. I've taught, I now do coordination. So my experience, and I have jurisdictionally in Ottawa, what happens in London jurisdictionally has very different implications than what is happening in Ottawa. And I think it's important that we have this regional voice through convocation, so the paralegals know what affects me in Ottawa may not affect, London or Windsor the same way. Diversity within all that we do, what Dimitra does, he speaks to in-house paralegals. Deborah speaks to EDI paralegals. Mike speaks to also in-house and different tribunals that are available to paralegals. All of our paralegals that graduate from our schools, a lot of them, we may have a cohort of 20, but only maybe 6 will go on to write this licensing exam. The rest are actually being scooped up by the government because we're a government town, and they're being picked up at the municipal, the city level. So we all have something that brings to the table, but what speaks to me the most is I am not how to vote. I have my own opinion, my own thoughts, but what really brings this group together as a whole, that regardless of our independent thought, we have a way of communicating that, is it for the greater good? I don't know. I disagree with you, but if it's access to justice and it coincides with the advancement of the profession, I will say it's not how I feel. It's not all about me, right? It is for the public of Ontarians, and it's for, the paralegal profession, and where these two intercede, that is my goal. And that's what speaks to me. Nobody tells any of us how to vote. And that's important. And I believe self-governance for both professions is absolutely paramount going forward. We've lost it in England, we've lost it in Australia, and we can't have that happen here, because it is going to be a very different landscape if that happens. We've heard of paralegals talking about self-governance. They don't at all. They mean fracturing away from the law society. And that is absolute, with the ideology of thinking that perhaps somewhere down the line, that if we somehow separate from the law society as a group of paralegals, somehow that's going to magically open the doors to expanded scope of practice. That's not true. And they need to understand that. So the most thing that to me is we all have our own independent thoughts and ideas on things. Education is one of the things I am also passionate about. And so I'd like to be able to continue that work.
Perfect. Thanks again, everyone, for that, for your responses there. This next question, again, kind of following up on that, I mean, maybe Michelle, you can address it. There is, again, there's kind of that inherent tension that is, just as Paula mentioned, between lawyers and paralegal benchers, right? In terms of, are the lawyer benchers kind of advocating from their position as, protecting the profession as lawyers? So looking at this in terms of how do you expect to implement some of these changes if you're, one paralegal on a law society committee, or there's only 5 of you collectively as benchers in a group of 45, right? I mean, it's pretty much 10% of the overall group. How are you going to sort of make those changes, though, at the paralegal level to things like access to justice?
So maybe we can start with a recent example of what took place at convocation last Thursday. So as chair of the Paralegal Standing Committee, I introduced a new package of reforms for paralegal education. And think about it, there are 8 lay benchers, 5 paralegal benchers, and 40 lawyer benchers. However, we still managed to implement changes to the paralegal education that are in the public interest. Now, having said that, they also dovetail with paralegal interests, because paralegals, young paralegals, recent grads, were telling us that they didn't feel competent to open their own practice once they were licensed to be paralegals. So we put our thinking caps on, and we thought, well, what we're hearing the most is we don't have hands-on experience. Okay, well, let's take the 120 placement hours and let's double them. Let's at least see if doing this will improve, will help paralegals to bridge that gap. We've done all kinds of things, bridge to practice for paralegals. We never had it before last year. Last year was the first year. Lawyers have always had it. Last year, we introduced a bridge to practice program for paralegals. We've got an essential skills program that's coming to the Law Society next year in 2024 again. So these are all changes that will improve the paralegal profession and as a result, improve access to justice. And we were able to do that with just 5 paralegal ventures. So there are things that we can do. I want you to keep in mind that a lot of the times, if it's about access to justice, and that's what it's supposed to be, the lay ventures will typically vote in favor. So the lawyer ventures, it depends. It depends on who you're dealing with. But the good news for the Good Governance Coalition is that we have lawyers, 40 lawyers running who have already committed to paralegals being integral to access to justice. So I do think we'll be able to move that needle. I do believe we'll be able to implement some of the changes we're talking about. As Paula mentioned, we are a step ahead because we've been networking with these lawyers already and have established respectful relationships with them. So I do believe that we'll be able to change their minds. Remember, it's not even so much about what happens at convocation. It's what happens outside. It's whether or not, you know, you spend time speaking with somebody else and establish a relationship, and not a relationship where you haven't read your materials and you don't know what you're talking about. You've established a relationship that you are organized, you know what you're doing, you're prepared when you walk into the meeting, you're prepared to debate the issues, you stay open-minded until the debate's over. So you might walk in thinking, I think I'm going to vote in favor of this motion based on what I've read. But you listen to the debate at convocation. That's part of your duty. And then you determine, this is how I'm going to vote. So I do believe that with the Good Governance Coalition, we'll be able to move that data and we'll be able to advance the issues that are important for access to justice for paralegals as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Michelle. And again, on the same length there, in terms of looking at it, you know, maybe we can go to Deborah for this question. Does the Law Society essentially have, you know, as the group of benchers, you know, jurisdiction to kind of say, here is what you can and can't do within your scope, right? I mean, is this something, again, you know, if the licensees are saying, no, we want to work in immigration, we want to work, you know, more in family law, I mean, than what was passed, is that something that, again, in general, the Law Society has oversight to, or again, is it looking after licensee interests, or is it something else?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Ultimately, the Law Society is looking at the public interest. And so if you look at the bylaws, if you read the act, it says in the act that the Law Society has a duty to protect the public interest, to maintain and advance the cause of justice and the rule of law, to facilitate access to justice for the people of Ontario. So that's the duty of the Law Society. And as benchers, that's our duty to make sure that that is seen through. So when the Law Society restricts what paralegals can do, it does it for a reason. Like, there is a reason behind it, because we need to make sure that at all times the people of Ontario are protected. If there is a chance that they're not, then that's a problem. And so, as I believe it was Paula that mentioned earlier, if it's not an access to justice issue, we're not that concerned about it. It needs to be an access to justice issue. If it happens to coincide with the interest of the paralegal profession, like personally that interest, then that's great, that's a bonus. But at the end of the day, it has to be an access to justice issue.
Perfect. So I think we only have about 5 minutes left. And again, for anyone listening, we're going to have an opportunity over the next few weeks with everyone here to speak more in depth individually. But again, I want to give everyone here, you know, a chance, maybe like a minute each, to kind of tell us again a bit more about why should the paralegals get, you know, why should they be voting for you? Why should they have your support, or why should you have their support? And perhaps maybe as I've done in the past, there any parting words of wisdom for any of the students listening about the whole process. And again, we'll start with you, Deborah, so you're still on my screen. And thanks again for all 5 of you for joining.
Thank you, JP, for having us tonight. And I guess my final words would just be, as you look through all of the candidate pages this coming week, just think about what it is that they're promising to do. Think about what it is that does coincide with the public interest. Think about who you want representing you at convocation. I mean, at the end of the day, we want people who will be respectful. We want people who are willing to build relationships, people who aren't actively burning bridges. You want someone who's going to come in there and be able to have these relationships and continue to build these relationships with lawyer licensees and have that opportunity to make change. If you don't build relationships, you cannot make change. And so I want just to let everyone listening know to be very much aware of that, be aware of what people are saying and how they are saying it.
Over to you now, Dimitra.
Awesome. Thank you, JP, for having us. Yeah, I echo a lot of what Deborah said. I think it's really important that when you're looking at who you would choose is think about the qualities that you would want that person to have. What kind of things are important to you when you look at like building relationships or the people that you really get along with, or that you find even the ones that you don't get along with? What are the elements needed for good collaboration? And do you see those elements? Do you see those characteristics in the people that have put their name forward as candidates in this election? Are you seeing what you would like in that particular person? And in terms of voting, I think it's really important that people use their voice. You earned it. I mean, the only people who are allowed to vote in this election are paralegals and lawyers. So you're one of many, like a small group of people who are eligible. So don't waste this vote. Go out there, use all of your votes if possible, and be very judicious, and be a critical thinker throughout the process.
Thanks, Dimitra. Michelle?
I like your ideas on it, Dimitra. So thank you. My father used to say, if you don't vote, you don't get to complain. And so I encourage paralegals to vote. It takes less than 5 minutes. You don't even have to go anywhere to cast a ballot. You can do it from your cell phone. You can do it from your desktop. It takes less than 5 minutes. If you don't know how to vote, feel free to reach out. I'm happy to walk you through, or any one of us will do it. If we're not connected on LinkedIn and you want to be connected because you want to help or volunteer, especially to your students, it's a great way to network and get to know people in the paralegal profession. This is the profession you're joining. So what better way than to get involved in an election? And Deborah mentioned the characteristics that we want to consider when you are choosing who you're going to vote for. You get 5 votes. And what you need to consider is, does this person build bridges or do they burn them? Are they a bull in the china shop, or do they do like Paula mentioned earlier? Do you stop and think, maybe this is one I shouldn't push on right now, and come back later at a better time when it will be better received? So there are a ton of consideration, but one of the biggest parts is the time commitment. It's huge. I know myself, I spend at least 50% of my time, and sometimes closer to 60, on venture duties. So we really need to assess, do the candidates who are running understand what's involved? Do they have the time to read 500 pages before convocation? Are they trustworthy? Because if they're not trustworthy, how do you know that your in-camera discussions that every board has, including the Law Society Board of Directors has, you can't discuss what happens in camera. So there are really important considerations, and being a bencher is serious work for serious people. You're looking at 5 of us who have raised our hands and said, we're willing. Please, please vote for us. And thank you, JP, for having us.
Thanks again, Michelle. Mike?
Yeah, this is really where I wish I had gone first, because you know, the points that Deborah and Dimitra and Michelle have made so far, all I can really say is ditto. Right? It's absolutely 100%. You have to think long and hard about who it is that's going to be representing the paralegal perspective at convocation. Now, you know, you have to look to, do those people have the experience? Are they able to work well with others? Because we've already acknowledged it's trite to say that one person alone cannot get anything accomplished. 5 of us working together would have a difficult time getting anything accomplished. We have to work with 53 people have to work together, or a majority of those 53 have to work together, and you have to look at who has the experience, the temperament, the skills to do that and move our profession forward. Because I really, as I said at the beginning, think that we're at a crossroads, and we can either continue moving forward, expanding our scope, and expanding within our scope, and at the same time, or we could move backwards and start losing things. So I think if it's time, you have to choose really think about who it is that will be representing the paralegal perspective at convocation when you're placing your vote. Now, to the students who can't vote in this election, but will in the next one, hopefully. One of the things that I wish I had learned earlier in my career, and not just as a paralegal, but in my business career, is how important your network is, right? So get yourself out there, meet people, talk to people, pick up the phone. I know, not to sound like an old man, but everybody likes to text or email or whatever. People are afraid of picking up the phone. But you got to get out there and talk to people and get to know them. And you never know, what connection is going to lead to a job, a job offer, a practice area, whatever. And find an area of law that you don't do everything and anything, right? Find an area that you really like, become good at it. You'll become known for it, and then people will come to you. You won't have to go out and find people to represent. So that's to the students, and to everybody else, vote early and vote often.
Thank you, Mike. And finally, Paula, I guess you get the last word here.
I'm pulling up the caboose. Here I come. So I can't say anything more than what my colleagues have already said. To the students, I mean, I'm in education. I'm in mentorship. Your profession, you are coming in the front door. You need to get involved. You need to network. And voter apathy is the biggest problem that students have. And if you have or know anybody that maybe other students, maybe not just students watching, if you know of in-house paralegals who may be thinking, this doesn't affect me, I don't bother voting. Right? It does. It's important because it's important to all of us, your lawyer colleagues and your paralegal colleagues. Networking is key when you're starting out in this profession. I met Mr. Mike Redan and his crew. It was a couple of years ago, and it's like, well, hey, you do that? Why don't you come to our annual Paralegal Day presenter? And they came all the way to Ottawa. I fed them. They slept here, and this is how connections are made. I have mentored students. We have all mentored students. Michelle, Deborah, Mike, Dimitra, we have all mentored new licensees, and giving a leg up to those coming up behind us is what I have done and will always continue to do, just as the rest of them have done as well. That is the best thing I can leave for you. Everything has already been said by all of my colleagues. We have experience. Who do you want speaking for you? you want speaking at convocation. That's what you need to think when you're punching your ballot, as they say. And for having us, JP.
Perfect. So thank you again, Paula. Thanks to all 5 of you for taking the time and joining me. And for anyone listening right now, I'm going to speak to all 5 of them again individually. So if you want more questions specifically to platforms and where they may stand on issues, we're going to get that opportunity with all 5 of them, as well as hopefully all the other candidates over the next few weeks. I'm also thinking about certainly looking at the lawyer candidates, although 107 seems pretty daunting, but we'll see if we can make that work. Once again, thanks everyone for joining, and I guess I should probably end with the disclaimer there. The views of the candidates are of the candidates alone, and not myself, Trias College, or any of the other education institutions. And again, I look forward to talking with the other candidates, and again with the 5 of them later on as part of this series. Thanks, everyone. Take care.